All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Trading Bitcoin with your host, Vays. Coming to you live a little bit late. Sorry about that. This is what happens when you schedule a call. And even if you give it a full hour, you still never get done. All right. Let's go to charts. I'm going to avoid the live chat because I don't want to get suckered into another stupid debate on Finland's stupidity. So I'm not looking at live chat. Being blocked right now. Let's just talk about Bitcoin. Again, I'm not ready to talk about politics because I still have not had time to catch up on everything. Other than I will hope that Gonzalo Lira is alive because he has not posted in a week. I'm in his Telegram group. He hasn't posted in 3 days. He hasn't posted. He missed interview appearances. And he makes sure that he's online every single day so that people know that he is alive in Ukraine. He was reporting from Ukraine. And if something did happen to him, I am 99% sure it would have been the Ukrainians that did it and not the Russians, unless, you know, a rogue missile happened to hit his bunker. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I just downloaded all of these latest videos, and that is on my watch list for the next 24 hours before this channel disappears. Hopefully, they'll still be there within the next 48 hours in time for me to watch his latest updates because I just didn't get a chance to between the Miami conference and my trip to Panama City before Miami. All right, chart, Bitcoin chart. This is obviously not a good look for Bitcoin. The month is now more than halfway over. So if this month closes below this moving average, and I've mentioned this before, and this would be the first time it closed right on the moving average. And every time it does, first time since, you know, back in 2019 and 2018, and every time it does, it finds a way to touch the next moving average. The next moving average is sitting in the $22,000 range. And while it would be awesome to buy a bunch of Bitcoin at 22,000, this needs to happen fairly quickly. It needs to happen in a fashion similar to COVID. If it happens in a slow bleed, the way it kind of happened here, that could be somewhat disastrous for a lot of initiatives, a lot of projects, and most importantly, El Salvador. So for the sake of El Salvador, spending like 6 months in this area is not good. It's not good at all because Bukele needs to be reelected and his election is coming up in a couple of years. And if he's sitting in a negative Bitcoin position, that becomes a big problem for his reelection campaign. That becomes a big problem for, you know, the biggest advocate of Bitcoin, you know, decriminalization. Bitcoin is fully legal in El Salvador. It's like the only country where you can actually use Bitcoin and not worry about getting arrested the next day. I think I talked about it with someone recently. Like, where's the best place to live? And the answer is there isn't one. Right? Like, my view on where's the best place to live comes down to like a triangle of economic and financial safety, human safety, and social safety, right? So we're talking, how bad is the crime? How likely are you to get arrested for financial stuff? And how likely are you to get canceled by the Marxist woke culture? I know I'm running to politics already, but it's not specific. And no country is perfect on all three of those. But El Salvador and places like Dubai are really good for some of those. The financial side, certainly, especially if you're a Bitcoiner. So El Salvador would be greatly hurt if this thing starts to drag out down here. And we don't know what's going to happen, but this is not looking good on a monthly scale. The weekly scale. The weekly scale is not looking good either. We can also look at the oscillators, and we can see how the RSI is, it's still trending up, but not in a great way. I don't really need this line anymore. It doesn't really do anything for me at this point. The RSI is kind of useless right now, and I would say it's leaning bearish. The MACD started to cross over, but look, your histogram is a little bit negative now. So, like the close of this week, though this week just started, this could be bad. And the CMF has been very ugly. It's a very ugly CMF. I'm not going to be super bullish on a weekly scale in Bitcoin until we break the $47,000 prior swing high, which would also put it above all the moving averages. The Consensio chart has us in full cash position. Was this full cash position enter a little bit late? Yeah, probably. Maybe a little bit late, but better late than ever, right? And right now, this looks like a very smart play because the price of Bitcoin is sitting below $40,000. These moving averages are going to really start to drop quickly, but you can see how the intermediate will still be above the long term, but it's not really comforting in the way it's structured. The short term is now going down and going down very, very quickly. The daily chart. The daily chart is rebounding a little bit today. We did have our MRI buy, but look what happened since then. The MRI buy led to a 1 to 4 candle correction. It was basically a 1-day correction as a dead cat bounce. Bitcoin was too weak to even make it to the moving average. I really thought these two moving averages had a chance of crossing over, but look, they didn't. They didn't even cross over. So that's a pretty bad sign. Look what happened today. Today, we broke below the prior swing low. This is going to be a very important close, guys. Today's daily close is going to be very important. If we avoid a new low close, that is somewhat of a, I'm not going to say a bullish sign, but a hopeful sign that we're going to avoid a complete and utter disaster. If we close in the bottom half of today's candle, that means we close in the vicinity of 39,000 or lower. Let's just say we close below 39,000. That is a very, very bearish sign with a possibility of an outright disaster. The only close for the day that I would consider inconclusive is a close between current price, is a close just below the prior swing low, but in the upper half of the candle. So any close between, say, the close right now, we're sitting at 39,300, right? So a close between 39.5, let's say, and 39.2. So any close, or, let's give it a bigger range. A close between 39 and 39.5 is an inconclusive close. It becomes a shitty close based on the prior swing low, but it becomes an okay candle based on how much it rallied from the daily low. So those are my three possibilities. That there's nothing positive that can happen here. The only way we get a bullish close today is if the price of Bitcoin rallies and closes above $40,500. So unless we rally all the way above this line here, okay, so here's what I'm going to do. Today's close being above $40,500 is a bullish close. Today's close, and then I'm going to put a range right here. Let me delete this. Well, actually, I'm going to put it here. Any close below 39, yeah, that's just below 39. So the close right here, I make this red. This is a disastrous close. And then the inconclusive close, I'll make that purple. The inconclusive close is 39.5 basically the prior swing low, down to 39, right there. I'll make this purple. All right, that's an inconclusive close. Now, what are we doing with a close between the purple line and the green line? This close in here. So this close is, you know, there's still a chance that a disaster can be avoided, and a close in this zone here of 40,000 adds to the probability that a near-term future close is going to be above 40 and a half. 40 and a half is now the key mark here. Does that make sense, or am I like just losing everybody? Is tax filing day significant? Not really. I don't think it's that significant. I mean, maybe some people are selling Bitcoin today to pay their taxes, but I don't know. We'll see. All right, guys, before I go on, the financial summit in the Dominican Republic is only 3 months away. We are 3 months away from August, and this is an amazing event. Come and join us. It will be absolutely great. You can see some of the footage from our last event out in Dubai, and this one is going to be bigger and greater. You can read all the details here. You can check out potential room upgrades, even though your included room is incredible. It's 5 nights with all traders, fund managers. We got some miners. It's going to be awesome. So read all this over. Okay, short-term chart, 1 hour, not interesting at all right now. We did rally a little bit a couple hours ago, but I don't see this amounting to much. Here's what I do like. I like the fact that while Bitcoin price is dropping, the GBTC premium is rising. This is telling me that there's nobody left to sell GBTC. Just nobody left to sell. And when the price of Bitcoin eventually rises, and we all know it will eventually rise, the GBTC premium is going to evaporate quickly because there's nobody left to sell. Everyone's just hodling it, waiting for the premium to go back to zero. The total Vays calendar is totally empty, but I got like 100 conferences to speak at around the world between now and the end of year. So I really got to start filling it out, but that takes time and I haven't done that yet. So if you guys want to support, please check out products and services. Those interested in the MRI indicator can purchase it right here, products and services MRI indicator. Those that are just looking to learn how to trade outside for something more advanced than my free learn trading section can go to products and services on-demand videos. Traditional markets, as you guys know, I am very bullish on the price of oil. I'm assuming this thing is updating. Might not be. Let me refresh. Yeah, it looks okay. I'm still bullish on the price of oil. I am bullish on the price of gold. Gold is approaching, what, the second highest weekly close in its history? Is that true? That's what it looks like to me. Yep. This is the second highest weekly close in the history of gold. That is great. I remain very bullish on gold. Bitcoin is correlating to the US stock market. You can see that the US stock market is in a similar trouble as Bitcoin. We are rallying a little bit today. So if the stock market can rally to the upside, that would be great for Bitcoin. You can see a similar candle. This one already went green. The Bitcoin candle is still red, but that doesn't matter. It's the shape of the candle that matters. And you can see this hammer style candle in both markets. So on the political channel, here's what I'm thinking. I am thinking of starting a political channel this summer on Rumble. But also depends how the financial summit goes. If I need to do a lot of stuff for the financial summit, I don't know how much time I can devote to the political channel. But I always have an option, right? My options are, I always have three options, right? I'm still trying to make these events because I feel that 99% of the events that take place around the world are terrible. I speak at all of these events, and I think most of them are terrible. And the reason why most of them are terrible is because the event organizers only care about money. They don't care about putting the best person on stage for you to learn from. They just care about how many sponsors pay and how many people pay for a ticket. Unfortunately, it's the only way to run a profitable conference is to only care about the money and not, value for the attendees, which is why my conferences don't make any money and they create a lot of stress. And everyone says that, Tone, this was an amazing conference. And then I say, yeah, but it's possible there will never be another one because they don't make any money and there's a lot of stress involved. To which the person says, but that's because you don't know how to run a profitable conference. And I say, correct, which is why I'm not doing this again. So that's basically how all the conversations go. Like, I had an amazing time. You should do it again. I'm like, I'm not doing it again. This is crazy. Like, why? Well, I lost money. They're like, well, it's because you don't know how to run a conference. I'm like, well, yeah, but you just said you had an amazing time, right? So these are the conversations that I have, and they're borderline like hilarious, but not really. So my personal options are do what I read every morning or about to start reading every morning, which is politics and social stuff. Go back to full-time trading, which is what I did before I started my YouTube channel, or in the very early days of my YouTube channel. I spent 80% of my time trading and 20% of my time being an influencer. I guess that's the best term I can use, being a YouTuber, being a blogger, being a public personality. But that's because no one cared, right? I wasn't being DM'd all day long. So the other option is to do 80% trading and maybe do a video once a week. I don't know. The third option is to just focus on conferences and forget about the stupidity of the world, or just, start a political channel and move to maybe El Salvador or like a cheap country and not have to worry about making money, but travel eats up a lot of that. So that means I wouldn't be traveling either. I don't really care about the 3-month chart. I can look at it. I think we're done with, I just want to look at Twitter stock. And I don't think Elon would be allowed to buy Twitter. I think Saudi Arabia, the Prince of Saudi Arabia would be allowed to buy Twitter, but I don't think Elon would be allowed to buy Twitter. Like Kim Jong-un would be allowed to buy Twitter, but not Elon. Like, because capitalists are the most evil, vile people in today's society. So I don't see how the United States government, half the country that voted for Biden, or the major shareholders of Twitter and 85% of Twitter employees will allow Elon Musk to buy Twitter. Like, I don't see that. I don't see how that's possible. Because Elon Musk is evil because he's actually a capitalist that doesn't he's not, he's like in between. He's just a total troll basically these days. I just don't see how they're going to allow that person to buy it, because the public opinion on Elon Musk is now the fact that he's an evil person. So I just don't see it. So I do want to look at the Russian ruble as well. It's not doing anything right now, but I think the Russian ruble has a chance to significantly appreciate. And I think the Ukrainian currency has a huge chance of going into hyperinflation. That's what the charts are telling me. My opinion of the situation happens to match the charts, but my opinion of the situation doesn't always match the charts. For example, my opinion of Ethereum is that it should be worth 0, but it's actually worth something. So my opinions don't always match my charts. And this, an Ethereum chart does look like it's going to break out to the upside, unfortunately. Oh, Monero's up. That's not going to last. Once Bitcoin starts to rise, a lot of the shit will start to fall. You know, it's a weird dynamic between Bitcoin and shitcoins. How are the yields doing? Wow, look at TLT. Drop like a stone. How's the 10-year yields rising, huh? Yeah, inflation's a bitch. Oh, look at that. MRI sell on a daily 10-year yield. So let's look for a 1 to 4 candle correction here. Three-month Heiken-Ashi. Wow, you are relentless. I've never looked at, oh no, I have looked through. That's the quarterly chart. Here's the 3-month regular chart, and it doesn't look that bad. The Heiken-Ashi version, nope, not that one. I mean, it's not crazy useful. We flipped on the MRI. We just need to break out. I mean, this doesn't really tell me anything. We're consolidating. We'll probably hit the moving average next quarter. When is this quarter ending? We still have a lot. We still have 2 months to go. We still have a long, this quarter just started. So we got a long way to go. April, May, June. So in July, we might break out. I mean, MACD on a 3-month chart strong. Though I should probably go to. Oh yeah, that doesn't matter. It's not changing the MACD. Yeah, because prices are the same. Yeah, there's not much more I have to add, guys. Like, I feel sorry for whoever the next president is, because they're going to inherit such a giant mess. They're going to inherit a ridiculous mess. I don't see a good solution out of the current geopolitical situation with Russia. I just don't see a good solution. You can pray and hope for a good solution, but I don't see it. A good solution could have happened immediately after the conflict broke out. A good solution could have happened in the 10 years prior to the conflict, but at this point, I just don't see a good solution. I know the Honey Badger conference is coming up in Riga, and I really want to go to Honey Badger in Riga, and I really want to go back to Georgia this September, like in September. That's the best time to be in Georgia. It's a decent time to be in Riga. Still a little cold. They're way too far north. And but I don't know if I'm going to go because I don't know if those countries are going to exist by September. Like, and I certainly don't want to be in those countries when the conflict breaks out. And neither Georgia nor Finland nor Latvia are doing anything to save the lives of the people in those countries. They seem to be wanting a Russian, they seem to be wanting a situation similar to Ukraine. That's my view on the situation. Like they think that they can, they're avoiding the situation in Ukraine, but they are actually telling Russia, come do to us what you're doing to Ukraine. Well, Crypto Fire. Well, look, I'm way behind on the Russia situation, but everything I said about Russia, Ukraine, like a month ago, well, like I don't see how that's any different. Like I have not changed my mind at all in that the more Russia is actually losing, the more likely they are to be just blanket firebomb every single human in Ukraine from an airplane with napalm. Like Ukraine does not, the Ukrainian people do not win by Russia losing. The Ukrainian people lose by Russia losing. And countries that are helping Ukraine the most put themselves in harm's way for Russia after they're done with Ukraine. This includes Georgia. This includes Finland. I don't think those like Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia are helping Ukraine much, nor can they, right? I mean, these are tiny countries with like 800 people living there, and they're not on the border with Ukraine, so they can't really help much. I mean, Finland can't help Ukraine much, but they're just, but by them entering NATO, they're inviting the complete destruction of Helsinki. Yeah, I mean, Russia has avoided carpet bombing with USA style in Ukraine because, see, America never needed to carpet bomb white people, right? America has never done that, right? They've only done that to like Asian people. They've done it to, Middle Eastern people. But the United States has never needed to do that to, say, Canada. Or, I mean, and they didn't even do it in Germany, right? I mean, like they went in on the ground and then they didn't nuke Germany, they nuked Japan. So like again, they did it again, Asian people, right? Like the Korean War, the Vietnam War, all the wars in the Middle East. Like America never needed to do that to their own people. So that's why that's why like the American military commentarists, they don't understand why Russia has not done yet that to Ukraine. Like, why hasn't Russia done that to Ukraine? Well, because it's the same people. Where do you people get your information? CNN? No, no, Yugoslavia was white people. No, not to Americans, they're not. No, Americans don't see Eastern Europeans as like the same kind of white people. They don't. Like America doesn't see Russians as like the same as Western Europeans. They don't see it that way. Hence the 20-year, 30-year demonization of Russian people after the Cold War ended. Hey, can we Google everyone? Google TV, you're done. I'm removing you from this channel. Hide user on this channel. Done. How can Tone be brainwashed by Russian propaganda if Tone doesn't watch any Russian propaganda? I love it. People just completely confuse the difference between what I think is going to happen and what I want to happen. I want to live on a different planet without Marxism. That's what I want to happen. Is that going to happen? No, that's very unlikely. The very likely scenario is that I'm stuck in a Marxist country like the United States without having great options to leave, nor the ability to leave because of a 2 to 3 year wait list on passport surrendering. So you see the difference between what I want to happen and what is actually happening? I don't want anybody to die. What I think will happen is a high probability of a nuclear war between Russia and idiots that want to provoke them to fire a nuke at them. I don't want that to happen, but that has become a very likely outcome. And based on the people in this chat, you want that. I didn't say they haven't gone to war against white people. I said they never carpet bombed and like destroyed everything. There's a big difference there. Again, no one actually listens, right? Like you hear stuff, but none of you actually listen. Ukraine has every right to build on their land. Russia doesn't care. See, here's the thing. Russia doesn't care. And they're bordering Russia. This is the problem. Your opinion and Ukraine's opinion, like they don't actually matter because because their country is next to Russia. My opinion on the situation doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Canada also has the right to put a nuclear missile directed at New York and Washington. Will America let them do it? Probably not. Would they carpet bomb Canada? Probably not, because it's the same people with a lot of, family on both sides of the border. Would America carpet bomb Cuba? Well, more likely, right? Not the same people. Though America is becoming very Spanish. USA starts every war. Oh, I pretty much in the last 30 years. Yep. That's true. Do you know what Putin meant by denazification? Well, I'm assuming he meant denazification. I don't see how that word is complicated. Putin believes that the majority of the Ukrainian military is former Nazis or grandkids of former Nazis, and he wants the Ukrainian military to not exist. So denazification and demilitarization is one of the objectives of this military interaction. So that when this ends, there is no more military in Ukraine other than, guarding the border and, minor things like that. So that the Ukraine is 30 million people, well, was probably about 25 million now. And the Ukrainian military right now is like, what, 250,000 active? And that military would become, I don't know, 5,000, 10,000, just enough to guard the border. Though I'm not sure who they're guarding the border from, because they have allies on most sides and Russia on the other, and Belarus on the other. So, yeah, I mean, that it is a controversial topic, though, right? Like, if the Russian objective is to kill the Nazis in Ukraine, and one surrenders, and you take off a shirt and you find a swastika tattooed on his chest, what do? If the military objective is to, execute Nazis without a need for a trial, and you identified a surrendered Nazi with a swastika tattooed, is it a war crime to then execute that person? That's a very touchy subject. Now, if a soldier dies in a field of battle because they're shooting at another soldier, that's not a war crime. That's war. There's a difference between war and war crime. If you start executing or shooting prisoners of war, that's a war crime. That is obvious. There's no gray line there, right? If a soldier surrenders and you capture them, and then a day later you decide to execute them, I believe that's a war crime. I don't really see a big debate there. But if the objective is to execute someone with a tattooed swastika on their body without a trial, even if they surrendered, that's a very touchy subject, whether that's right, wrong, or a war crime. And there's lots of other gray areas. So 250,000 soldiers are Nazis. No, of course not. That's a stupid statement. Probably a few thousand, maybe 10,000. It's a very small percentage. It's a small percentage of the Ukrainian army, but it's a big influential percentage. And that's Russia's concerns. I think we're too far away from talking the possibility of nukes. Who do I think the first target would be? I think the first target would be one of two places, Poland or Finland. Probably, and the only reason why I'm leaning Poland is because Finland is too close to the Russian border. Though Belarus will be upset if it's Poland. Who really fired the missile that took out the Moscow? That's the warship. Probably Ukraine. Probably Ukraine. I'm not going to get into conspiracy theories here. I mean, Russia wouldn't fire on their own ship. That makes no sense. It makes sense why Ukraine would fire on themselves, because Ukraine wants the West to come and help. It doesn't make sense for Russia to fire on itself. I just don't see the logic there. I don't see the logic of Russia creating a false flag. I mean, how would that help them? It wouldn't. But I can certainly see Ukraine doing a false flag. That helps them a lot. Carl V, please explain how this would end so fast if Russia provokes the West. Because if you fire a nuke at Moscow, Moscow is going to fire 100 nukes into the West. So again, I don't know which country you live in, Carl. Carl V, what country do you live in? And you're probably going to lie because based on your other statement, if you want Russia to provoke the West and you think the Russian military is a joke, I have a 99% chance you will not answer the next question honestly as to where you actually live. Another anonymous troll, DTN358. No, it is unlikely for me to go to Georgia. As much as I like Georgia, it is unlikely for me to go to Georgia because Georgia is openly fighting Russia in Ukraine, and that creates a huge probability that Russia will eventually go and start killing Georgians in Georgia. So I don't really want to be inside Georgia if that happens. So the probability of me coming to Georgia is very, very low because the Georgian military is doing stuff that's inviting Russia to come in and start killing civilians. So yes, I'm less likely interested in coming to Georgia. Has nothing to do with being a Russian apologist. It has to do with realizing the reality of the geopolitical situation. Russia has been doing it for 30 years. No, Russia has been doing it since 2008 when Georgia announced they plan to join NATO. Which at the time, I was very, very angry at Russia because I love Georgia. But now that 12 years have passed since those days, and I've grown, I feel like I've gotten a lot smarter in those 12 years, and I learned a lot more. I now understand why Russia did what they did. At the time, I didn't understand why Russia was doing that to Georgia. I believed in the crazy propaganda of the Western media that Russia just wanted, to rebuild the Soviet Union and take over Georgia's land. That is what I believed back in 2008 when Russia had a military conflict with Georgia. Now that this Ukraine stuff is playing out, I understand exactly why Russia went in and killed the Georgian military back in 2008. I understand it now. I'm not saying I am clapping for it. I'm not saying I want that to happen, but I'm saying I finally understand what happened in Georgia in 2008. And I understand that Georgia is doing stuff right now that's going to make 2008 look like happy days. There were no talks of NATO in 92. 92, that's when like the Soviet Union broke up. Like, why don't you just go back to the 70s? People will learn something if they listen to Dr. John Merschmeyer. Yeah, they probably will. I mean, I haven't heard his stuff in a while, but he's basically right. Tone, surely a nuke at Poland is a declaration of war against everyone. And what happened to the military assured destruction? Well, here's the thing, right? Morph, the reason why I think Poland is the most likely target is because if you think from the Russian point of view, if you put yourself in Putin's shoes, it's already an open war against Russia, right? They have been financially sanctioned. And did you see the latest one? How many tanks did the United States just ship to Poland in order for them to bring it into Ukraine? Like, if you, I mean, I don't get a chance to listen to, the Russian politicians, like Putin and his people, because it's getting censored, right? So I don't get a chance to listen to it. But you have to assume that from the point of view of Putin and his cabinet, it's already an open war. The United States has declared war on Russia. They're just not, the United States doesn't have the balls to actually put troops in Ukraine yet. They've done everything but that. So as far as like Putin is concerned, though, the United States has openly declared war on Russia. That's it. So if Russia starts to lose, being in NATO is not going to make any difference whatsoever. It won't. See, would it matter for the Polish people that they're in NATO if the first place that gets hit hard is Poland? Great, you're in NATO. Wait, there's no more Polish people. But you were in NATO, right? I mean, NATO was great for the other countries, not the first country that takes the hit. Like, Finland joins NATO to avoid Russia. Great, there's no more Finnish people. They're all gone. Because by joining NATO, they all got killed. And then the United States and Germany and everybody else can then retaliate and try to kill all the Russians. But what does that do for the Polish? What does that do for the Finns? What does that do for them if they are the first countries to get annihilated? It will get a lot of sympathy votes on a lot of tombstones. The best thing you can do to save the people of your country when you're bordering Russia is try not to provoke Russia to fire at you. And the simplest way to avoid that is not to join NATO. The next best way is to go into economically beneficial arrangements, so that there is no economic incentive for them to do it. Right, America is fighting Russia in Ukraine till the last Ukrainian dies. That's exactly what is happening right now. All right, guys, that's it. I had enough. I'd like futures on Ukrainian farmland. Why? The Ukrainian farmland is being permanently damaged by the shelling of the weapons. The Ukrainian farmland could be a wasteland for decades to come. Why would you want to buy Ukrainian farmland right now? So big A, here's where your analogy makes no sense at all. If an armed burglar breaks into your house, an armed burglar is trying to steal something from your house. What is Russia trying to steal from Ukraine, right? I know the mainstream media has everyone convinced that Russia wants Ukrainian land, but that is false. I mean, sure, we'll take the East region where the Russian speakers are and where they felt there's been a war going on for 8 years, right? But your analogy only makes sense if Russia actually wants all of Ukraine, which they said from the beginning they don't. They just want a neutral Ukraine. That's basically what they've been saying from the beginning, right? So this is why your burglar analogy is totally stupid, because your burglar wants something from your house. He wants the stuff in your house. If Russia wanted the stuff in Ukraine, they would have starved Ukraine of energy back in 2014 instead of giving them a contract to sell them energy at a 30% discount. So that's why your analogy makes no sense at all. Like, unless you don't believe them, right? Like, if you believe that Russia wants Ukrainian land and Russia wants to just to kill all Ukrainian people, then yeah, then your analogy is correct. But if your underlying assumption is just wrong, then your analogy makes no sense. And your underlying assumption is just wrong. My Instagram DMs are usually a total shit show, but I'll glance at it. Correct. Putin does view Ukrainians as Russians, which is why he doesn't have an interest in carpet bombing all of them. As a Russian, I'm reading a comment. As a Russian, I think Russia should be nuclear disarmed. Right, and I think I should marry 18 Victoria's Secret models. It doesn't mean we're going to get what we want, right? I don't actually want that, but just saying. Just about your opinion is more stupid than my opinion. This is the only way Russia will advance its economy. But again, what you want and what is reality are two very different things. Yumi is asking, why is he killing civilians and doing war crimes? Well, civilians get killed because it's a war, and things misfire all the time. In order to starting a war is not a war crime; it's starting a war. Like two very different things, right? Like if your metric for definition of a war crime is starting a war, then 1 million people in America should be, imprisoned for war crimes, right? Because how many wars did America start? A war crime is executing civilians, and a war crime is executing prisoners of war. Those are war crimes. And based on how much propaganda there is on both sides, it's just impossible to say that that's actually happened yet. And by executing, I don't mean by accident. I don't mean shooting at military targets and killing civilians. I mean actually executing civilians, like genocide. And the evidence on that is very questionable, to say the least. People can't wait for Russian economy to collapse and turn into North Korea. That would be very difficult. It would be very difficult for that to happen if Russia makes strategic partnerships with China and India. I just don't see how the Russian economy would collapse if they make economic partnerships with India and China. Right. Purposely targeting civilians is a war crime. Executing prisoners of war is a war crime. Firing at a military target surrounded by civilians is not a war crime. It's war. Invading a country is not a war crime. It's war. There's a difference between a war crime and war. Executing prisoners of war with swastikas tattooed on their body is a gray zone, whether that's a war crime or not. In my opinion, that's a gray zone. I'm not a fan of execution of surrendered soldiers or people. So even soldiers, even with swastikas tattooed, if they surrendered, I think it's a gray zone. Shooting civilian buildings with people is what? It depends. It depends if there are soldiers in those buildings shooting back at you, right? This is the difference, right? If it's a building that is civilians only and you take down the building, yeah, that's a war crime. But if it's a civilian building with military on the roof of that building shooting at you, it is no longer a war crime to take down that building. It's war. That's the difference. So when you present a statement like, what does shooting a civilian building with people in it, what is that? Well, there's not enough context there, right? Is it only are there only civilians inside, or are there soldiers shooting back at you? Are the civilians shooting back at you, right? If there are civilians in that building that are shooting at the military standing in front of the building, then yes, the military has every right to shoot at that building. Again, it becomes a chicken and egg situation. These people were going to destroy the civilian building, so we are defending the civilian building by shooting at the people who want to destroy the civilian building, and therefore the people destroyed the civilian building, right? This is the same chicken and egg with NATO, right? Well, we want to join NATO because they can invade. But if we join NATO, they will invade. It's the same thing, but on a different scale, right? Russia says we're not going to invade if you don't join NATO. But we think you will invade, so we're going to join NATO. Therefore, we invade, right? It's the same, again, the civilian building is the same thing. We're a civilian building. We think you're going to kill us. This side says, we're not going to kill you if you surrender. These guys say, we don't believe you, so we're going to start shooting at you. Therefore, this side destroys the civilian building. And now that's considered a war crime. Again, chicken and egg, right? What caused it? What started first? I mean, no one is denying the fact that, Russia blew up a building with civilians in it. The question is why, and was it justified? If they were shooting back at them, now was it justified as to why they're there in the first place? Again, that's at the higher level. It's the same debate, but at a higher nationwide level. Russia would never invade a NATO country. I don't know if that's a true statement. I'm not going to say that's true or not. They might. If Russia feels NATO is not strong, they will. But right, like Russia is not willing to invade a NATO country. If that's the thought process, right? Let's assume this is true. Russia will never invade a NATO country. Okay, so we will invade your country before you become NATO, so that you don't become NATO. But we want to become NATO so that you don't invade us. But we will invade to make sure you don't become NATO. You see the problem here? I don't really see what's complicated, right? Like, Tone, you have no idea, you're out of line, you have no idea what you're talking about. I don't understand how that's complicated, right? Like, no interest to invade, right? Well, like Russia did not start shooting people in Georgia until 2008, when Georgia decided to join NATO. Like Georgia, Russia, Georgia, right? Russia. If you try to join NATO, we're going to come in and shoot your soldiers. We don't want you invading our country, so we're going to join NATO. But by announcing you're going to join NATO, that causes us to react and come in shooting. In 2008, they did it to Georgia and not Ukraine. If I had to guess as to why they did it to Georgia and not Ukraine in 2008, is because Ukraine is a lot bigger and stronger than Georgia. And also, Putin and Russia don't see Georgians as the same people. Georgians are kind of different versus Ukrainians. Russia is way more intertwined with Ukraine than it is with Georgia. You can't compare 92 and 2008. 92 was immediately after the breakup of the Soviet Union. That is completely different. You can't compare those two things. That's 15 years apart. You can't compare those. It was for completely different reasons. Russia broke up in 91. All kind of hell was going on in that entire region until it stabilized itself in the mid to late 90s. Well, like that has nothing to do with each other. It's completely unrelated. Completely different mentality of people. The way technology evolved from the early 90s to 2008, I mean, the internet came into existence, for God's sakes. The 15 years from 1992 to 2008 are in a completely different lifetime than the 15 years from 2008 till now. Like, life in 2008, 2009 wasn't that different than now. The only difference is the smartphone. So literally the only difference in technology between 2008, that's when the iPhone came out. The iPhone came out, but we already had internet. We already had bill pay. We already had Facebook. We already had Google. We already had everything. We already had YouTube. The only difference in life between 2008 and today is the smartphone. We had laptops back then. We had everything, right? There's almost no difference whatsoever. None. Comparing 1992 and the 15 years from 92 to 08 and 08 to today is just stupid. Not to mention that entire region just collapsed. Well, the smartphone is a big difference. Is it that different than everything else in technology from 92 to 08? The personal, the internet itself. I mean, there was no internet in 92. It wasn't. Nobody was using it, right? Like, is the cell phone more important than the internet itself? No, of course not. I mean, there was internet in 92, but no one used it. All right, I gotta go, guys. Talk to you all on the next one. Is this thing gonna stop?